Good evening. It is Wednesday. Welcome to the third day of my week of workouts focusing on the core. Yesterday I did a very basic beginner's guide to engaging the core and some very basic exercises to see how you are doing at engaging your core and keeping your pelvis in alignment, which is really important. So if you are a total beginner, please watch that one first before you do this one, because for this one I'm going to be doing the basic stuff that we did yesterday as the warm-up, and then I'm going to be progressing the exercises. I'm going to show you a few lovely exercises from the basic level, and then I'm going to work my way up to more advanced levels. So there's it does, if you are a beginner, you can still watch it, but it would be really useful if you'd watched yesterday's first to give you the basic grounding in it. Now this is all lying down on the floor. If you've got a mat to lie on, that would be great. If you haven't, then a towel would be great. I actually haven't got anything to lie on because I'm not at home at the moment. I'm in a hotel in sunny Suffolk, so I don't have anything. So I'm doing it on the floor, and but obviously it's more comfortable on a mat or something with a bit of padding. Now if you can't get down onto the floor, or if you haven't got the space, you could try doing it on the bed, but I would just suggest that the floor is better for these exercises, just because it's easier to keep your pelvis in a nice neutral position, especially if your bed is a bit soft. But you can try it if you can't do the floor. So these are there's some real classic Pilates exercises. I'm just doing today exercises on your back, lying on your back. Good evening, lovely to see you. Just doing exercises lying on your back today. Tomorrow I'll be doing something completely different. I might incorporate some exercises standing and on the floor tomorrow. We'll see how we go. But today it's some basic exercises. We'll do a warm up with the stuff that we did yesterday, and we'll do some basic exercises, and I'll start with the basic level and I'll work my way up, adding things to make it harder, so that you can see how you can progress the exercises depending on how strong your core is. So yesterday I was telling you how important it is to engage your core muscles, zip up your tight jeans, tighten up your tummy, brace yourself as if somebody's going to punch you in the stomach, so it's really tensed up. So that's really important that you do that when you're doing these exercises, so that you are really benefiting. You're working those muscles. You don't want your back to be taking the work when you're doing these. That's the point. You want to protect your back by engaging those core tummy muscles. All right, let me get on. I'm going to lie down here. So you're lying down. So I'm just going to do the quick posture, and then we'll do a quick warm up with the moves that I did yesterday. So your feet are hip distance apart, your knees are parallel, and your pelvis is neutral. I'll come back to your pelvis in a minute. Your shoulders are relaxed, your ribs are relaxed down, your neck is nice and long, and your arms are relaxed. So back to the pelvis. You've got your marble in the middle of your tummy, and you're going to tilt your pelvis forwards and backwards. So flattening the small of your back down into the floor, marble rolls up to your belly button, tilting your pelvis so that your tailbone tilts down really heavy, marble rolls down to your pubic bone. Tilt the pelvis forwards and backwards like that, and then make those movements a little bit smaller and come to rest in the middle position. In that middle position should be the neutral spine position. Your hip bones and your pubic bones are level and flat in a nice triangle. See if you can feel where the bones are and make sure they're flat in a nice triangle. This is the neutral spine, which is the most effective way for you to do your exercises, because it follows the natural curvature of your spine, so it's a safe and effective way to do it. You should have a little bit of a gap underneath your back depending on the shape of your spine. Everybody's different, obviously. But if it feels like it's too much of an arch, keep your pelvis still and then relax your ribs down a little bit so that it's more comfortable for you. But crucially, the pelvis is flat. That's the position you want. So you don't want to be lifting up your tailbone and sinking your lower back down into the floor, and you really don't want to be arching your back and have a great big arch under there. It needs to be somewhere in between. Nice flat pelvis. So that's your posture. You are engaging your pelvic floor muscles, of course. You're going to be tightening them up a little bit, as if you're just trying to stop yourself having a wee, but just tighten them up a little bit. You're going to try and hold them there. You're engaging your core muscles. You're tensing your tummy, zipping up your tight trousers, pulling your belly button in towards your spine a little bit, bracing those muscles so that if someone came to punch you, you wouldn't feel it. It would just bounce off because those muscles would be nice and tight. And it's really, really important to practice that, engaging your muscles. So that's what it's all about. So let's do the breathing. You're going to breathe in through your nose and blow out through your mouth. Whilst you're breathing, you're trying to keep these muscles engaged all the time. So breathing in through your nose, blowing out through your mouth. I'm going to do the moves we did yesterday as a warm-up. So if you're a beginner, these might be enough for you and you might not want to move on to the rest of the stuff. So we're going to do a single leg slide. Breathing in to prepare. As you breathe out, you're sliding one foot away. As you breathe in, you're sliding it back. As you breathe out, you're sliding your other foot away. And as you breathe in, you're sliding it back. So if you don't stick to the breathing that I'm suggesting, don't worry about it, as long as you're not holding your breath. But the breathing pattern that I'm doing is just the easiest way to do it, so that when you're moving, you're breathing out. So breathing out, and you're moving still when you breathe in on that one, but generally the thing that's more effort, you're breathing out. So importantly, you're keeping the pelvis still. Because you've tightened up these muscles, you've engaged these core muscles, you're not letting your pelvis move as the legs move. So whatever's going on with your limbs, you're not allowing the pelvis to move. Your hip bones are pinned to the floor, your tummy is tight, your back's not arching, your back's not moving at all. That's basic. So that's just warming up your legs and your hips a little bit. We can do some double leg slides. So you're going to breathe in as you breathe out, both feet sliding away. It's a little bit harder as you breathe in, both feet sliding back. Also depends on what you've got on your feet. If you've got bare feet, it might be easier. If you've got socks, they might come off. If you've got a slippery floor, it's easier. If you've got a mat, it might get in the way. So don't worry too much about it. My socks are coming off. So you're breathing out as you slide the feet away. You're breathing in as you slide them back. Now, if you can feel when you pull them back, that's the slightly harder bit, that your back's then arching, then that's too much for you, and you need to go back. Just stick to the single leg slides, because the doubles are a little bit harder. So you don't want to be feeling your back pulling. You don't want to be feeling your back arching. You need to keep it nice and still. That's the key to keeping your core muscles engaged. So we've done singles and we've done doubles. So then I'm going to do what I did yesterday, a single knee fold. So you're breathing in to prepare. As you breathe out, you're lifting up one knee, knees above the hip, shins parallel to the floor. Breathe in. As you breathe out, you relax it back down. Breathe in to prepare. As you breathe out, lift up the other one. Breathe in, breathe out to put it back down. So again, you can do the breathing differently if you want to. This is just the most effective way of doing it. So you're making sure that you've got a nice right angle behind your knee. This is important for when you come to do other exercises. So really think about that right angle behind your knee. Knee is above your hip, directly above your hip, shins parallel to the floor. So of course, you've tightened up your pelvic floor, you've tightened up your tummy, you've engaged those core muscles, and when your legs are moving, there's nothing else moving. The pelvis isn't tilting at all, and the back isn't arching. So there's no pelvic tilt going on when the knee lifts up. It's engaged and it's nice and stable in that position. So this is your single knee fold. So if you remember yesterday, we did a slightly harder option, which was to imagine that you've got a cream cake underneath your foot, which is just lift a little bit of weight off of that. That's a bit harder. And if that's too much for you, then you don't want to do the double knee fold. You don't want to go any further than this. So if you can do the double, you're going to breathe in. As you breathe out, lift up one foot. Breathe in. As you breathe out, lift up the second one. Engage the tummy muscles before you lift up the second one. That's the hardest bit. Nice deep breath at the top. Breathe out to put one foot down. Breathe in. Breathe out to put the second foot down. And then when the next time you do it, start with the opposite foot. So you're breathing in. As you breathe out, lift up one knee. Breathe in. As you breathe out, lift up the second one. Squeeze the tummy a little bit more before you lift up the second one. And then one foot goes down and the other foot goes down. So if this is a bit of a struggle and you feel your back moving, you feel your back arching, you feel any pulling in your back, or you feel your tummy lifting up, then these are too hard for you and you need to stick to just doing the singles, and please don't go any further. You need to build up the strength first in your core muscles and don't make it harder, because we really don't want you to hurt yourself. So if this feels fine, lifting up one foot and then the other one, it feels fine, and you can maintain that position there without letting the back arch, without letting the tummy lift up, without any uncomfortableness in your back, then that's great. Then you'll be able to move on and do the other exercises. So that was just the warm up of the double knee fold. I'm just going to do one more little warm up exercise, which is a hip drop. So we'll do a single hip drop. My feet and knees are together for this one, and it's easy with the arms out to the side. You're breathing in as you breathe out. One knee's going out to the side, but of course this knee is staying straight up towards the ceiling. You're not letting it wobble. Breathe in as you breathe out. It's coming back to the middle. So you're breathing in as you breathe out. The other knee's going out to the side. You breathe in as you breathe out. It's coming back. So it's called a hip drop or a knee drop. You're letting the knee and the hip rotate out to the side, but you're keeping your pelvis still. So exactly the same as if your legs were going out that way. Your legs are going out to the side, but your pelvis isn't moving. Your hip bones are pinned to the floor. Your tummy is tight. You've engaged your core muscles, and you're not letting the other knee move. So it's really, really important that you keep this bit still. If you feel it wobbling about, then again, make the movement smaller, tighten up the tummy a little bit more, and just focus on working on this before you progress to anything harder. So that's a single knee fold, not a knee fold, what is it? A hip drop, a single hip drop, how can I forget that? And then I'm going to do a double hip drop. So you're going to take both knees, breathing in as you breathe out, both knees going over to the side. Breathe in as you breathe out, they're coming back to the middle. Breathe in as you breathe out, they're going the other way. Breathe in as you breathe out, they're coming back. So obviously when you do this, your pelvis does move. So you're allowed to let your pelvis tilt. Your knees can go over as far as is comfortable for you, as long as the top of your back is staying nice and flat and stable on the floor. Obviously you're tightening up the pelvic floor and the tummy, and you're not letting that go. You're not letting the back arch, you're just tilting over to the side, but the shoulders, the shoulder blades, top of the ribs nice and flat and heavy on the floor. That's a double hip drop. So we're going to come back to that in a minute to make things a little bit harder. So that's your basic warm up of I've just warmed up your spine a little bit, your hips, your knees, your legs. Just before we do some more, I'm just going to do a little pelvic tilt. So the ones that we started with, sinking the small of your back down into the floor and then tilting back. So a nice exaggerated pelvic tilt, just to make sure that your spine is nice and warm. And then whenever you need a stretch, you can bring your knees into your chest and have a little rock there to stretch out your back there. Okay, so I'm going to go back to the double knee fold because I'm going to do a hip drop. So if you're, as I said, if the double knee fold is too much for you, then you don't want to do that. You want to go back to yesterday's video and stick to the real basics to work on engaging your core muscle. So if you've come this far and your double knee fold is okay, we're going to do tap downs. So in your double knee fold position, that's the tabletop position. Your legs are like a tabletop. Knees above your hips, shins parallel to the floor, nice tight engaged tummy, pelvic floor's lifted, arms can be relaxed. So you're tightening up the tummy. You're going to breathe in. As you breathe out, you're tapping down one foot. As you breathe in, you're bringing it back up. As you breathe out, you're tapping down the other foot. As you breathe in, you're lifting up. So this is a tap down. This is a single tap down, one foot and then the other one. I'm going to keep saying this and I know it's boring, but if you feel your back arching or your back hurting, don't do it. It's too much for you. Go back to the easier things. If you've got any back problems, then you need to be very, very careful. Now, I actually have got a bad back, so I'm not going to do the very, very tough stuff, and I can feel it. But if you've got any back issues, then please be very careful and don't do something that's going to hurt. So the slower you do it, the harder it's going to be. You're focusing on keeping the right angle. Remember I said you want to make sure you're keeping that right angle, because what you don't want is to bring your foot in towards your bottom. That's not a tap down. You're just moving the bottom of your leg. You don't want to move the bottom of your leg. You don't want to hinge from your hip. And you don't want to hinge from your knee, sorry. Do I know my body parts? Yes, I do. So you don't want to hinge from your knee. You want to hinge from your hip. So your hip's moving, not your knee. Your knee's not moving at all. It's nice and stable. So I'm going to not do too many more of these because it's quite hard work. So you're doing a tap down like that. I'm just going to relax back down for a minute and have a little wiggle. I'm just watching my back. So if you wanted to make those harder, you could add in some arms. So if you just have your arms up, things will be a little bit harder because you're not quite as stable when you haven't got your arms flat down on the floor. So a little bit harder, you could do tap downs with the arms up. And if you wanted to make it even harder, you could add in an arm going behind you. So the right foot's tapping down, the left arm's tapping back.
left foot's tapping down, right arm's tapping back. So as soon as you incorporate the arms as well, it makes it a little bit harder. You've got to engage those core muscles to make sure that your back's not arching, your ribs aren't lifting up, and of course you're also breathing. So that's still tap downs, but slightly harder tap downs. Now I'm just going to have a little rest before I do the next one. The next one is a double tap down. So if the single tap downs were too much for you, don't do the doubles. I can only do a few of them because of my back problem. If you've got a strong, nice strong core and you haven't got any back problems, then you can do more. But I'm going to look after my back and only do a few. So really tighten up the tummy, engage those core muscles nicely. You're going to breathe in. As you breathe out, both feet are tapping down. And as you breathe in, both feet are coming back up. So you can see I'm keeping the right angle. Squeeze the tummy in. As you breathe out, you're taking the feet down. As you breathe in, you're bringing it up. I'm not going to do any more. You can do more if you want to. I just know the limits of my back and my dodgy back. So tap down if you want to and come back up. And again, you could make it harder by having your arms up. And you could make it harder by adding the arms in. I want to give you all the levels here. So this is quite advanced. If you're tapping down both feet and both arms are going away, you've really got to be strong in the middle. You've really got to keep this bit under control, because when both sets of limbs are moving, your back wants to go, your pelvis wants to tilt. You mustn't let that happen. You've got to keep this strong. So that's the harder version of the tap downs. And of course, with all of these exercises, if you wanted to make it even harder and you really want to work hard and your core's nice and strong, you could just add some weights. You could add weights in your hands, you could add ankle weights or weights that strap onto your feet. Obviously, I'm not doing that with my back, but that's always a possibility with Pilates, to make it harder by doing it with weights. And another way to make everything harder is to do it slower. So that was your tap down. So the next one I'm going to make a little bit harder is the hip drop. So we did single hip drops and then we did double hip drops. So I'm going to come back to the middle. I'm going to do a single knee fold and then a single hip drop at the top. So you're taking that hip out to the side, back to the middle and down. You're tightening up the pelvic floor. You're engaging the core muscles. Single knee fold, single hip drop at the top, back to the middle and down. So with these ones, again, you're keeping the pelvis nice and still. That's what you're focusing on. Not letting the pelvis tilt, not letting the back arch. You can do it as slowly as you want to. It makes it harder if you do it slower. Obviously, if your hips are not as flexible, that's okay. You just make the movement smaller, because if your hips aren't flexible, what will happen is your pelvis will tilt when you go over. So we don't want that. We'd rather the movement was small, but the pelvis stays still, because that's where you know that you're really working your core muscles. So that's one option. Single knee fold, single hip drop, back to the middle and down. Or you can do a double knee fold. Squeeze the tummy and lift up. Make sure the core's engaged and you're not arching your back. And then a single hip drop at the top. And again, with the single, your pelvis is staying still. You can make it as small as you need to if your hips are not as flexible. But you're really, really tightening up the tummy, keeping your hip bones pinned to the floor. You can do it slower. Make sure that you're breathing. And that's that. So that's a double knee fold with a single hip drop. And then I'm going to do a double knee fold and a double hip drop. This is harder. So breathing in as you breathe out, you've got your double knee fold. Lift one knee, squeeze the tummy and lift the other one. Don't let the back arch, don't let it sink down. Engage those muscles. So a double hip drop, the easiest way to do it is with your arms out nice and wide. Tighten up the tummy and you're tilting to the side. So the pelvis is allowed to move, but the top of your spine isn't. Squeeze the tummy in as you come back. And again, this will depend on how flexible your spine is, how far over you can go. So if you haven't got a flexible spine, if it's a bit stiff, you may not be able to go over very far. That's okay. Better to keep the top of your back nice and flat, your shoulder blades and your shoulders and your ribs nice and flat on the floor, and not to take the legs over too far than to go over too far and let everything lift up. We don't want that. So better to keep it under control. So that's the thing with Pilates, it's much better to do smaller movements but have them under control. So you're thinking about your pelvic floor, you're thinking about your tummy, your core's being engaged, you're breathing nice and deeply, and anything that's hard is when you should be breathing out. And of course, if you were strong and you wanted to make these harder, you could do them with weights on your feet, and that would be even harder. Or you could do them with your legs straight up, and then with a longer lever, your legs are longer, it's going to be harder. Make it slower to make it harder. And that is your hip drop. So I'm going to come back down. When you come back down, try to bring one foot down at a time rather than collapsing down in a heap like that. That's not great. So have a little wiggle. So I'm going to do at the 100. So I touched on this yesterday, the 100. We did a beginner's 100, which is just the arms with the legs down. And the next beginner's 100, one leg up in a single knee fold. And then we did the cream cake. So if you're not as strong and you want to do any of those, you can do those. So the 100 is basically that you're getting into the position and then you're beating your arms 100 times. You do 5 beats to breathe in and 5 beats to breathe out. So we'll do it with the double knee fold, but if it gets too much for you, put one foot down. If it starts to pull on your back, put one foot down. So your pelvic floor's lifted, your tummy squeezed in, you're breathing in. As you breathe out, you've got your double knee fold. Lift one knee up, squeeze the tummy in, and lift the other one up. So this is the basic position for the 100. Arms are nice and straight. You've got 5 beats to breathe in and 5 beats to breathe out. 5 beats to breathe in, 5 to breathe out. If you need to make it shorter, if you need to do 4 to come in and 4 to breathe out, that's okay. So my knees are above my hips, my shins are parallel to the floor, not letting the back arch. If you feel the back arching, put a foot down. Now you could do this with your legs straight, and if your legs are straight up towards the ceiling, it won't be too bad. If you're strong and you haven't got any back issues, you can lower your legs down. Now I can't do it very well. What you can do is lower one leg down at a time. If you start to lower one leg down, you'll feel it a little bit more. Obviously then swap. But if you can manage it, you lower both feet down. Some people can do it with their legs right close to the floor. Because of my back problem, I can't do that, so I'm not even going to attempt to do it because I know I'll hurt myself. But if you can do it with your legs down there, and you'll know that your core's nice and tight and you're not hurting your back, then great, go for it. And a lot of people do this with their head lifted. Now, I'm not doing it with my head lifted today, because when you do it with your head lifted, you're engaging the rectus abdominis muscles at the front, the 6-pack. But when you do it with your head down, you're more working the deep muscles, the transverse abdominis muscles, and those are the ones that I'm working on at the moment. So if you want to do it with your head up, that's okay. But I would always advise people to do it both. I would always advise people to do it with the head down first, because then you know you're working the deep tummy muscles, and you need to get them strong first before you start trying to work on your 6-pack. So we've probably done 100 of those, so bend your knees, relax back down. And of course, to make it harder, you could add some weights. You could hold weights in your hands, you could have weights on your feet. But if you are using weights on your feet, please be very, very careful of your back. So any back issues, I wouldn't use weights on your feet. I have to be very, very careful when I'm using weights. And if you're not strong, then it's not time to start adding the weights. Only add the weights if you want more of a challenge, because you know that you can do the advanced options. Okay, so that was 100. Next one, my absolute favourite exercise was the single leg stretch. So if you are a beginner but you're still watching this by some remote chance, you won't want to do this. Well, actually you can do this, you can do it high. But if you want to do an alternative, you can just do your single leg slide. That's the version. Or you can do a single leg stretch with the foot lifted off of the floor, like a slide but with the foot lifted off the floor. And again, you're keeping the pelvis nice and still. So that's an easier option. So otherwise, we're going to do our double knee fold. So you're tightening up your pelvic floor, you're engaging your core muscles, you're not going to be hurt if somebody punches you. Breathe in. As you breathe out, you've got your double knee fold, and that's the tabletop position that you're going to start this exercise in. So you're going to breathe in. As you breathe out, you're lengthening one leg away and holding the knee with the other, holding the other knee with your hands. Breathe in. As you breathe out, swap. So one knee comes in towards you, the other leg straightens out. Now, if this is too hard, you would do it with your leg going further up towards the ceiling, because the higher up your legs go with all of these exercises, there's less stress on your back, and it's easier to keep your pelvis in its nice neutral position. The minute you start taking your leg further away, your tummy has got to work harder, your core muscles have got to work harder to keep your pelvis in its neutral position, and that is what we are after, of course. That's what we need to do, keep the pelvis nice and still and stable. So this is the basic one. Your hands are on your knee, your legs going down as far down as is comfortable for you. You're not letting your back arch, you're not letting your tummy lift up. and your pelvis is staying nice and still. So if you wanted to make it harder, you can add in an arm. One arm can go behind you as your leg goes out, the same arm as the leg. One arm goes behind you as the leg goes out. So that's quite nice, but again, it's a little bit harder than not using any arms at all. That's quite nice. So you're breathing in, you're breathing out as your leg goes away. Breathe in, breathe out. If you wanted to make it a little bit harder, you're going to do both arms. Breathe in as you breathe out, both arms going behind you. Breathe in as they come back. Breathe out as both arms go behind you. Breathe in as they're coming back. So again, when you're taking both arms behind you, your ribs want to lift up. We don't want that to happen, because if your ribs lift up, your back is arching, and we don't want that. You need to keep the back still. You need to keep the tummy tight so that the pelvis doesn't move. So be careful if you start adding in two arms. Really, really make sure that you're nice and tight and your pelvis isn't moving. There's another arm movement you could do to make this even harder. You can come across your chest. So come towards the knee that's the wrong way. Come towards the knee that's coming in, across your chest. Now, if you start taking your arms sideways in a different direction to what your legs are going, it makes it even harder. You will feel it. Obviously stop if you've had enough. I'm going on to try and demonstrate all the options. But you need to make sure that the pelvis isn't tilting. Not only is it not tilting forwards and backwards, but it's not tilting side to side, because your arms are going side to side. Your pelvis might want to join it and tilt side to side as well. So make sure that's not happening. So there's all sorts of arm options that you can do with this. So easy one, hands on your knee. A bit harder, one arm going behind you. A bit harder, two arms going behind you. Watch the ribs. And a bit harder, knees, arms going to the sides of you. And again, if you wanted to make it even harder, slow it down. Make it as slow as you can. And it's always hard if it's slower. And if you wanted to make it harder, weights in your hands or weights on your feet. But again, be very, very careful with weights. Don't hurt your back. Okay, so that is a single leg stretch. I'm going to come back and relax back down. That's a single leg stretch. In between all of these, I'm just stretching my back out and having a little massage to make sure my back's okay. So that's the single leg stretch. We are going to do the double leg stretch. So nice neutral position. Make sure that you're in that neutral position to start with. You've lifted up your pelvic floor. You've tightened up your tummy. You are going to breathe in. As you breathe out, you've got your double knee fold. Lift one knee, squeeze the tummy, and lift the other one. So for this one, your feet are together and your knees are apart, and your hands are on your knees. Now I'm going to do the breathing separately in a minute, because the breathing's different for this one. I'm just going to do the movements to start with. So your arms are going behind you and your legs are going to straighten. I'll do it straight up because it's easier. So arms go behind you, legs straighten and knees come together. And then as your arms come round in a circle, your knees come back out to where they started. It's a little bit like breaststroke, except that your feet are staying together. So as your arms go behind you, your legs go out and they're straight and your knees come together. As your arms come back round in a circle, your knees come back out. A little bit like a frog. Is it like a frog? Yeah. So everything straightens and then everything comes back to where it started. Now the breathing for this is the wrong way round. So if it's too complicated, don't worry, just breathe how you would normally breathe. But you should be breathing in to start and breathing out to come back. Sometimes I get confused and do it the wrong way round, so don't worry if you do. Breathing in as everything goes out, breathing out as everything comes back round. So of course, what are you watching out for? You're making sure that as your arms go behind you, your ribs are not lifting up. You don't want your back to be arching. And also you're thinking about your pelvis. So when your legs straighten, your pelvis isn't tilting, your back isn't lifting up, everything's staying nice and stable. Now I'm doing the easy option here because of my back, with my legs going quite high up into the air. If you can do it, you can take your legs further away. I can just about manage one like that. But you can do it much, much lower down. If your back's strong and you've got your core muscles engaged, you can do it like that. But I'm not going to hurt myself, so I'm going to stick to this. So of course you can make it slower. To make it harder, you could add weights, of course. But all the time we're thinking about keeping the pelvis stable. That's the really, really key thing here. We're keeping the pelvis nice and stable. We're not letting the back arch. The minute you've let the back arch, you want to stop because you've gone too far. I'm going to stop there. We've done loads of those, and have a little wiggle. So we've done the 100, we've done the single leg stretch, we've done the double leg stretch, and we're going to do one more exercise in this position. So I just wanted to focus on this position today because I really wanted to keep banging on about keeping the pelvis still in this position. So the last exercise I'm going to do is scissors. Now, if you don't want to do scissors how I'm going to do it, you could do tap downs. Tap downs is basically scissors but with your legs bent. So we did tap downs, we did it like this, one leg down and then the other leg down. So if you want to do scissors, you would do one leg goes up as the other one comes down. So that's your tap down, your scissors tap down. So again, you're keeping your tummy tight, you're keeping your pelvis nice and still, and you're breathing. So scissors is exactly the same as this, but your legs are straight. So straighten up your legs. You're going to hold on to the leg coming in towards you, and you're going to do a little pulse. So you're going to breathe out, breathe in, breathe out, breathe in. So you're trying to bring your leg nice and close in towards you, so a bit of a stretch down the back of your leg as well. And you're trying to lengthen the other leg down along the floor as well. Tummy squeezed in nice and tight. Pelvic floor's lifted. If it's a struggle, if you've got very tight hamstrings down the back of your legs, this will be tough for you. So you might be better off doing the tap downs with your knees bent, because with scissors, you really want to try and keep them straight. I didn't do a stretch before, so this is quite hard. But if that feels okay, this is a really, really nice one. Obviously, all the same things apply. Your pelvic floor's lifted, your tummy's tight, you've engaged your core muscles, you've zipped up your tight jeans, you are not letting your back arch, and you're not letting your pelvis move at all. So that is your lovely scissors. Nice evening. There is another level of scissors where you're up on your shoulders, but I'm not going to do that one today. So that's slightly different. Okay. Come back and relax your feet back down one at a time. Wiggle the pelvis a little bit. Bring the knees into your chest and have a little stretch and a little roll. So we have done some of the very, very basic exercises there in this position that I wanted to show you to really, really focus on that core engagement and keeping the pelvis nice and still. So take it at your own pace, see how you go. If it's too much for you, please don't do the things that are harder. Stick with the beginner's level first, and then work on the core, and gradually then you will get better. And obviously, if you've got any questions, please send me a message. If you want any information or any advice, please message me, and I will be happy to help. Thank you so much for watching. I will be back tomorrow. Again, I'm here every day this week, Monday to Friday, more for me. I'll be back tomorrow, and I think I'll probably do some more interval training that might involve standing and floor work as well, so that will be quite tough. And then on Friday, of course, I've got my nice gentle seated workout, but that will still be a core workout, but seated. So if there's anyone that's got limited mobility and they want to do something nice and gentle, then please look out for Friday's workout, which will be seated. Otherwise, I hopefully see you tomorrow. Thank you so much for watching, everybody. Have a lovely evening. Bye bye. Oops, can't switch you off.